the actual business. And I'm not sure I've seen a more challenging year. The basics, the universities are talking a lot about the basics. We've got poor conditions in terms of stalk condition because as the drought hit, these newer varieties, they cannibalize the lower part of the stalk and they make it more likely to fall over. Let's face it, corn's trying to make an ear corn to grow and make a new, they're not trying to figure out a way for humans to make it easy to harvest. So if we don't scout our fields, and it's not going to hit every field, but if we don't scout our fields and find those fields that are subject to poor stalk conditions, we're going to be in trouble real quick. The universities are all agreed that we need to start probably earlier at a higher moisture than we have in the past, and we need to be completed earlier, or we're going to have some issues. That you don't let this crop sit in the field because it's going to go down. So we're going to have to be real cognizant of that and get that crop out, because you work so hard to get that crop in the ground, you work so hard to get it up and get it growing, and then the rain turned off, and now you've got a poor crop. You don't want to let it go on the ground and not be able to harvest it. It's a terrible thing, and you don't want to go through that. After you've got it harvested, there comes other issues. We've got a basic long-term forecast for the temperature staying higher. And like anything else, the warmer the grain is, the shorter its storage life. I've used the comparison of, you put a piece of chicken out on a picnic table, it's not going to last very long before it's bad. Put it in the refrigerator, it lasts for a long time. Corn is a food product. It reacts the same way. The quicker you can get that corn out of the field and dried, hopefully down below 15%, and get it cooled down below 50 degrees, the better chance you've got to store that. Now, there are some other conditions that we've got to be aware of this year. One of them is there's a lot of mold that's going to be coming in with the corn. If we don't find a way to you can't kill it all probably, but we need to kill as much of that as we can, and the easiest way to do that is heat the grain above 120 degrees. And most of your portable high-speed dryers, whether they're dry and cool or all heat, will heat grain hot enough that it'll kill the majority of the mold, and that makes it store a lot better. If you don't have a way to kill that mold and make the grain more storable, you probably should be looking to market and move that grain down the road quicker. In the first 30 or 60 days, you probably want to move it, because if you haven't heated it up and got rid of a lot of that mold, you're just too likely to have some issues to the balance that year. We're also going to be very careful on temperatures. We're going to have to make sure we get down cool quickly, and we're going to have to watch those temperatures through the storage period. I really feel strongly that if there's ever a year that we need to dry grain a little drier, this is probably it. We can't control the outside temperature. There are some products. We've got a product called Bin Manager that will watch your grain and will only run your fans when it's going to make it cooler. So it'll cool it down overnight. It'll get it cooler quicker. But we can't really control that. We can't control the outside temperature, but we can control the moisture. And 14% corn will store at that higher temperature for 2 or 3 times as long as 15. So the universities have talked about this, and I have to agree. If there's a year that you should consider drying a half a point or a point drier than you normally do, that's probably the best insurance you can take if you're going to have to store that grain for a longer period of time.
But then you have to store it, and so you have quality and safety concerns as well.
One thing I think that most of the people involved in our business have come to agree on is that the biggest problem or the biggest thing that will get you in a safety situation is bad corn to bin. If you've got good corn to bin, you generally don't go in there. You don't put yourself in a position where you might become entrapped. You don't expose yourself to that danger. So if we can get this grain in there and keep it in good condition, move it if we don't have the right equipment, and we can get it cooled down and we can store it in good condition, we're not going to expose ourselves to that safety issue. The other one is the mold. I ask the question at many of the training sessions I do, when is it safe to go in a grain bin? The most common answer you get is when it's empty. It is possible that the most dangerous time to go in a grain bin is when it's empty, because that's the most likely time that you're cleaning it, you're moving it, and you're going to be exposed to the mold spores. And heart attacks and there's all kinds of things that we think those things cause. Please wear your breathing apparatus when you go into a grain bin. Please be careful in that area, and this year particularly, you're going to have a lot higher. So there's no question that grain quality has a direct connection with exposure to safety risk, and if we don't do our job and we don't manage properly, we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
How about kernel quality when it comes to grain this year? In corn, drying it, any concerns about how it's come through this season in the field?
So far, the reports we've got with the corn has been that it's dried relatively normal. We were a little afraid we might have some hard drying corn. We haven't seen a lot of that, but you're going to have unusually shaped kernels. You're going to have kernels that have been highly stressed, and they're more susceptible to breakage, no matter how you handle them or you dry them. There's little question in most areas that we're going to be dealing with breakage and more fines. And of course, more fines means more mold growth. I don't think, one of the things that we found out in the South, and one of the University of Illinois professionals was talking about in one of the meetings, was mold grows at 6% per hour at 80 degrees in a closed area, in your truck or in your hopper tank. So it's going to be important to get that dried down quickly. But once you've got a grain quality issue, you've tremendously increased the chances of a safety risk. You're going to have fines, you're going to have condition problems, you're going to wind up with a safety risk. They all kind of tie together.
Are there concerns about then what this year's crop in the bin, if you have to store it? Say you get a mold problem, say you have something else going on in this bin, you get it empty sometime next year, hopefully you clean it out with a respirator on or anything else, but then what about putting grain back in it in 2013?
This will be a good year to do an exceptional job at cleaning your bin. It's more difficult to get down under the floor, but at least police those floors and make sure the conditions. Do clean them out thoroughly. Do treat them. This is going to be one year that not doing that for next year's storage could potentially basically spike that next year's crop and get that mold started. So it's going to be really important that we get the bins clean and that we work with them. If we don't, we're going to carry this problem on another year. Even if we have a great year next year, and even if the grain's in great shape, we may carry this problem on another year. We don't want to do that.
Any concerns for soybean storage?
Some, and you have all the same issues. Now you got an oil product. You do dry it down drier naturally. You go to 13.5%, 13%. So you are a drier product, but you have an oil product. And an oil product does not like high temperatures. So all of the things we talked about corn, and I'm glad you brought that up because everybody's been talking about corn, and of course that's our cash crop for a lot of people, and it's what we grow most of. But soybeans all the same things are going to apply to them, all the same kind of management principles, and get it cooled down quickly, get it contained. We probably won't see as much mold issues there, but there are other issues that come up with an oil product that you need to be aware of. So we're just going to have to be diligent at our management and our practices that we go through our storage year so that we don't put ourselves in a bad position.
Does it start with keeping an eye on exactly what's coming out of that field into the combine even before it may get to the grain cart or into the bin?
I really, I've been at this a long time, but one thing that really spoke to me this year was the discussion of scouting. Get in your field. Know what you've got coming in before you harvest it, when you've got time to plan what you need to do. If there's ever, this year is one of those years that you need to be out scouting and knowing what's coming beforehand. You don't want to be trying to work this from the backside. One comment that was made is if you've got a bad mold problem in the field, you've got to if you have insurance, you've got to get your insurance agent out there before you harvest it. Because once you've harvested it, the insurance don't cover it. So things like that we need to be thinking about, we need to be concerned with. But we're just going to have to do a better job this year than what we normally do.
It's going to be a challenge on all fronts.
All fronts. I've used the term perfect storm. I'm not sure I've ever seen so many combinations. There's other things that happen other years that we don't see this year, but to have so many issues combined together at the same time to make this fall storage or this winter storage season a challenge, I strongly recommend that you don't try to put any grain in a bin above 15 under any circumstances. If you're going to store it past, say, the new year, you probably ought to be looking at 14 and a half. If you're going to try to store this till next fall, you probably better be looking at 13 and a half, even 13%. That lower moisture is your best bet.